Good luck out there. My boss, Wilson, suddenly told me I was being sent overseas. There had been talk of an overseas assignment, but I never thought I'd be the one chosen. After all, I have a wife, and we just bought a house recently. But it turns out, Wilson had stolen my wife right under my nose, and now I was the only one being shipped off. 3 years later, I returned to America. Wilson still treated me with the same arrogant attitude as before. You incompetent fool. I can't believe you haven't quit yet. I decided it was time to tell Wilson the truth. I'm your boss now, by the way. Once Wilson realized the situation, he started apologizing profusely. My name is Mike Johnson. I will be 32 years old this year. After graduating college, I started working at my current company in sales. I met my wife, Catherine, at a matchmaking service 5 years ago. We dated for 6 months and then got married. Catherine is 2 years younger than me. At the time, I was surprised to see such a young person at a matchmaking service. Apparently, Catherine had always dreamed of getting married and wanted to have kids, so she started looking for a husband early on. At 25, Catherine was very mature, graceful, and flawless. Honestly, I thought she was too good for me. So when I found out I could date Catherine, I was jumping for joy. And when she accepted my proposal, I threw a party with my friends. It's been almost 5 years since I married Catherine, but I feel like the passion is fading. They say marriage is different from dating, and I guess Catherine's mindset has changed too. When we first started dating, she was very affectionate, but now there's none of that. Catherine became a housewife right after we got married, and even now, she handles all the housework perfectly. But ever since we bought the house, I feel like her attitude has changed even more. How do I put it? She seems more distant and formal, like she's trying to keep a distance from me. I started to get suspicious of Catherine's behavior, so I decided to consult my trusted boss. To be honest, I feel like my wife's been avoiding me lately. What do you think, Wilson? I'm not married, so I wouldn't know, but I guess these things happen, right? This is Wilson Williams, my direct supervisor. Wilson is great at his job, and he's someone I really respect. Wilson is turning 39 this year, but he's not married and apparently has no plans to be. So I wasn't sure if I should talk to Wilson about Catherine, but I really wanted some advice. I guess since we've been married for a while now, maybe things are just settling down. Yay, that's probably it. Want me to go over there and assess the situation for you? That would be great, thanks. Right after we bought the house, I invited Wilson over once. At the time, Catherine seemed to hit it off with Wilson, so I thought maybe he could get her to open up if something was wrong. Plus, Catherine spends most of her time cooped up at home, so I thought interacting with someone else might help her mood a bit. That's why I invited Wilson over. I'm home. Welcome back. Wilson, right. Long time no see. Sorry for the short notice. No worries. Dinner's ready. Even though I brought my boss over out of the blue, Catherine had prepared a lavish meal. Man, your cooking is still amazing, Catherine. Thank you. Want a drink too? Oh, yes please. Catherine is shy, so she doesn't talk much to people other than me. Even at family gatherings or when I bring co-workers over, she's the type to sit in a corner by herself. But it seems like she's opening up to Wilson, actively chatting with him. Have you and Mike been getting along well lately? Oh, yes, we have. I'm always grateful for him. Catherine replied, glancing at me as she answered Wilson's question. Figuring I should leave so Wilson could get her to open up more, I made an excuse about going to buy more alcohol. We're running low on drinks, so I'm gonna go grab some more. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love some beer and whiskey if they had them. See you in a bit. Though she seems to be opening up, I'm worried about how Catherine keeps her head down the whole time. Maybe she's really built up a lot of frustration with me. With that uneasy feeling, I headed to the nearby convenience store. I bought the alcohol Wilson requested and some random snacks, then hurried back home. Catherine might be in the middle of confiding in him right now, so I quietly entered the house, careful not to make a sound. I know I shouldn't really be doing this, but I was curious what Catherine was talking about. However, I would soon regret my actions. Because in the living room, I witnessed Catherine and Wilson in an intimate embrace. The moment I saw that scene, my body froze, unable to move. Huh? What's going on here? What, are they so close together? Wilson had his arm around Catherine's waist, patted her head. From an outside perspective, it was obvious they had an intimate relationship. Could it be that she got so fed up with me that she sought comfort from Wilson? I turned various possibilities over in my head, but couldn't find an answer. The two of them hadn't noticed I was back, so they remained pressed close together. Figuring it would be awkward to walk into the living room like this, I decided to go back to the entrance and make some loud noises before entering again. So I slowly walked back towards the entryway, pretending like I had just gotten home. I'm home. I stomped my feet to make it as clear as possible that I was back, then entered the living room. The two of them, who had just been in a clinch, were now sitting across from each other, looking completely unfazed. They seemed so relaxed that I almost thought what I saw earlier was unreal. Thanks for picking that stuff up. Sure, but don't you think you should head out soon? Last train's coming up. You're right about that. Catherine, thanks for having me over today. With those words, Wilson left. Now it was just me and Catherine in the house. Should I ask about what I saw? But for me, who originally just wanted to know her true feelings, that earlier scene was too much to handle. Just the thought of my boss and my wife cheating makes my head want to explode. In the end, I woke up without getting a wink of sleep, unable to ask Catherine the truth. After getting to work, Wilson came to talk to me right away. So I asked Catherine about it yesterday. She said she's lonely because you're so busy with work. I see. What's wrong? You two have a fight or something? Wilson told me what they had discussed yesterday, but to be honest, almost none of it registered, because I couldn't get the image of the two of them out of my head. Even if I asked Wilson directly, I couldn't do it with other people around. So I'll call him to a private room after quitting time. That's what I decided. With that thought, I spent the whole day at work, carrying around this unresolved feeling. I don't usually make many mistakes, but that day I made a staggering number of them. I screwed up so much that even Wilson chewed me out. Listen, I don't know what happened, but you've been pretty awful today. You need to focus more on your job. I'm very sorry. I'll be more careful from now on. No matter how much Wilson yelled at me, the word affair kept flashing in my mind. If Wilson and Catherine really were having an affair, what was I supposed to do? Before I knew it, it was already past time to leave for work. All right, I'm heading out. Don't stay too late, you hear? Wilson told the employees still in the department, then stood up and started getting ready to leave. Nervously, I called out to him. Wilson, I have a personal matter to discuss. Could you join me in the other room? What is it? Sure, but is it that serious? Yes, there's something I need to ask you about. I told Wilson that, then asked him to come to the other room with me. Wilson was acting like nothing had happened yesterday. Honestly, it made me start to think I might be mistaken. Must be a big deal if you're calling me to a private room like this. I'm all ears, so tell me what's on your mind. When I stepped out to go shopping yesterday, I saw you and Catherine in an intimate position. What was that about? For a little while after I asked, Wilson thought hard with a stern look on his face. Maybe he was trying to think up an excuse. But all I could do right now was wait for Wilson's answer. About 5 minutes passed before Wilson finally opened his mouth. Well, guess there's no helping it if you found out. Don't tell me. Jay, I've been having an affair with Catherine for a while now. Wilson said it bluntly, with his usual friendly face, not looking the least bit guilty. Wilson said it's been a while. Does that mean since right after we bought the house? It's true the two of them seemed close back then, but to think they'd been having an affair that long. But Catherine is usually at home, so I didn't think an affair was possible. Well, that's because I go over to your place while you're at work. Catherine's really proactive, you know. In that moment, I felt something collapsing inside me. I had just wanted to know why Catherine started avoiding me. How did it come to this? I couldn't accept that my respected boss and beloved wife were having an affair, no matter what. The shock was so strong that I became unable to say anything. Man, I never had any desire to get married, but I'd love to marry someone like Catherine. Wilson, do you even realize what you're saying? Having an affair is wrong. Well, yeah, but it's all good as long as no one finds out, right? Wilson said with a laugh. It made me sick to my stomach. Maybe Wilson and Catherine had even been enjoying the risk of me finding out. And to think they were having an affair in our newly bought house. I don't care if you are my boss. This is unforgivable. Now, don't get so angry. It's fine. I've got it all figured out. Figured out? What do you mean? That's a fun surprise for after you find out. Anyway, I'm going home. You should head back soon too, Mike. With a wave, Wilson left. How was I supposed to come to terms with this reality? I will have to tell Catherine too. With the heaviest steps I'd ever felt, I went back to the house where Catherine was waiting. Catherine, can we talk? What's wrong? You look so serious. You and Wilson have a special relationship, don't you? In that moment, Catherine made the most severe expression I'd ever seen. I'm sorry. And with tears welling up in her eyes, she apologized to me. An apology means she is admitting it. So Wilson and Catherine really were having an affair. Thinking about it, this house we worked so hard to buy started to seem hazy. Sorry, I need some time to think, so I'm gonna stay somewhere else for a while. I told Catherine that, packed as much as I could into a suitcase, and headed to a nearby hotel. For a while after that, I worked like a zombie. I couldn't sleep at all at night, but I had to go to work, so I showed up every day at work, making mistake after mistake. About a month into this routine, I saw a notice posted on the bulletin board. Mike Johnson, transferring overseas. What's this about? Suddenly, I was being relocated abroad. Wilson had never said a word to me about an overseas transfer. It's true there had been talk that the overseas branch was short-staffed and someone needed to go, but there shouldn't have been any specifics decided about who would go when. Flustered by this sudden development, I headed straight to Wilson without a second thought. Wilson, what is this? I never heard anything about an overseas transfer. Really? I thought I mentioned it. I recommended you for it. I mean, you wanted to go overseas, didn't you? I never said I wanted to go overseas. I retorted loudly, even though everyone in the office was watching. I had to, or I might really get shipped off to another country. But no matter how much I argued, it seemed the outcome wouldn't change. It's already decided, so there's nothing you can do. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. And so, I experienced utter defeat. Before going abroad, I tried to gather evidence of the affair, but it seemed Wilson and Catherine were determined to hide it thoroughly. Since then, I went back home to prepare for moving overseas, but Catherine never slipped up at all. Then, she silently thrust divorce papers at me. I really wanted to find proof of the affair, demand compensation, and then get divorced. But it was almost time for me to leave the country, and I didn't have the time to look for evidence anymore. Fine, I just have to sign it, right? I was completely unsatisfied, but I signed the divorce papers and handed them to Catherine. After that, since I was going overseas, the people in my department planned a farewell party for me. Of course, Wilson, the person I did not want to see, would be attending too. Man, no one ever thought Mike would be the one to go abroad, huh? Even though he had tried to trap me, Wilson said that in front of everyone. But at that point, I had no energy to argue back. I really wanted to demand compensation, expose their affair. But no matter what I said in this situation, it probably wouldn't get through to anyone. Today, I just focused on getting through this gathering, gritting my teeth and doing my best to suppress my emotions. Even so, Wilson tried to stir up my feelings even more. Still, I feel bad for Mike. Why is that? I mean, he got divorced, so now he's gotta go overseas all alone. What? Mike got divorced? I had no idea. I hadn't told anyone about the divorce, but Wilson deliberately brought it up. He probably found it amusing to see how I'd react. Some stuff happened and we decided to get divorced. That stuff sure makes you curious. Well, good luck out there on your own. As Wilson spoke, he put his arm around my shoulder. Honestly, I wanted to shove him off, but I endured it in that moment. If there was a chance to get back at him, this was not a good timing. I decided to build up my strength so I could take revenge when the time was right. And so, I headed to the overseas branch. I sold the house and split all the assets. I really wanted to demand alimony from Catherine too, but I didn't have the crucial evidence. I was left with this unresolved frustration. But after I started working at the overseas branch, I felt like I had changed a bit from before. I started to forget about Catherine and Wilson, and I found work more enjoyable than I used to. That was probably because my work environment changed and all my colleagues were great people. When I confessed that my boss stole my wife and I got divorced, everyone got angry on my behalf. In that moment, I truly felt glad that I had come overseas. 3 years passed since I went to the overseas branch, and it was time for me to return to America. I had thought I might keep working at the overseas office, but apparently it wasn't that simple. There are a few branches in America, but the one I was being transferred to was my old office. The branch where Wilson, the man I resented so deeply, worked. I thought I had the worst luck, but this might be my chance for revenge. Thinking that way, going back to America might not be so bad. With revenge against Wilson burning in my heart, I returned home. Only 3 years had passed, so most of the scenery was familiar. I made up my mind to go to the branch office where Wilson was waiting. The atmosphere at the company hadn't changed at all. There were just a few unfamiliar faces. Among them, I spotted a familiar one. Wilson. Wilson seemed to notice me right away. With a surprised look, he approached me. And suddenly, he said something unbelievable. "You incompetent fool. I can't believe you haven't quit yet. Even though we used to be so close, people can be cruel. Oh right, I got married, by the way. Guess who?" Wilson was being sarcastic and said it, and all I could do was stare back at him. Seeing that I wasn't arguing back, Wilson seemed to find it boring. Clicking his tongue, he started to walk off somewhere. Watching him go, I looked for my desk. The moment I tried to sit down, someone grabbed my shoulder forcefully from behind. "Hey, that's where my boss sits. What do you think you're doing, taking a seat there? I'm your boss now, by the way." "Huh? What kind of nonsense is that?" I was dead serious. The truth is, the reason I came back to America was because a new position had been prepared for me. Over these 3 years, I think I've grown a lot as a working adult and as a person. The company recognized that and appointed me as a general manager for our operations in America. Usually, at my age, most people are section chiefs or department heads at best. So Wilson probably never imagined I had become the general manager. Honestly, I'm still in shock myself. I was so depressed, making blunder after blunder. Who could have predicted that 3 years later, I'd be the general manager? Wilson still seemed unable to accept the fact, suspecting that I might be lying. "There's no way you're the general manager. I believe everyone was informed in advance." "It did say Mike, but it must be a different one. No point lying. You'll get caught eventually. Better to confess now." Apparently, everyone was told that someone named Mike was coming from the overseas branch to be the general manager. But it seems like that is the only information they heard. Mike is a common name, so I can't blame him for thinking it wasn't me. Still, just the thought of becoming Wilson's boss makes me want to laugh out loud. Plus, it seems Wilson and Catherine got married since then, so this might be my chance for revenge against both of them. After that, I was introduced to everyone as a general manager, and Wilson had a look of disbelief on his face. I don't interact with Wilson much, but just being in a higher position than him gives me a sense of mental stability. "Wilson, that report you mentioned before had a lot of errors. I'm very sorry about that. Lately, I feel like Wilson has been making quite a few mistakes. Maybe he's feeling the pressure. For me, him screwing up on his own is a relief since it lowers his evaluation. If I did anything directly, it could be against the rules, so I'd rather avoid overt harassment if possible." Not only has Wilson been making mistakes, he's also been forgetting to submit things more often. So he's been doing nothing but overtime lately, lamenting that he doesn't get home until right before the last train. "Well then, I'll be heading out first, Wilson." I said it loud that Wilson could hear, picked up my bag, and left the office. I was planning to stop by the supermarket on my way home, so I dropped into the one nearby. I've gotten really into cooking lately. As I was browsing ingredients, trying to decide what to try making today, I suddenly heard a loud voice. "Oh, Mike, is that you?" I whirled around and saw someone who looked like Catherine standing there. Why couldn't I say for sure it was her? Because her appearance was completely different from before. She used to have beautiful, glossy long black hair, but the woman in front of me had short blonde hair. Her makeup was also really heavy, with lashes so long they could probably blow out a candle. Catherine, I'm pretty sure you could tell. I'm much cuter now, right? It is important who you are with. She used to speak gracefully, the kind of woman you'd describe as refined. But the Catherine in front of me now, vulgar would be a better fit. She talked like a teenager, and her laughing grated on my nerves. You've sure changed a lot. I think it's because I remarried a great guy. I see. I was at a loss for words at how much she had changed. If her vibe was the same as before, I might have been jealous that she remarried Wilson. But looking at Catherine now, I don't feel an ounce of envy. Like she said, the person you date or marry is important. Catherine had become a completely different person, enough to make me realize that. Apparently Catherine hadn't been told yet that I was the general manager. After that, she started making comments looking down on me. So like, you went overseas but came back. Did they send you packing because you were useless? Maybe Wilson had been telling her over and over that I was incompetent. But even so, what kind of person says that to an ex-husband? I really didn't want to get involved, but this might be the perfect chance to make Catherine regret it. With that in mind, I decided to tell her the truth. Sorry to disappoint you, but I became the general manager. So I'm Wilson's boss now. General manager? What's that? Never heard of it. The person in charge of all the departments. I explained, but it didn't seem to register with Catherine. Apparently it wasn't just her appearance that changed, but her personality, too. Realizing the Catherine I once loved was gone, I couldn't help but feel sad. So that means you make a ton of money. Maybe even more than my husband. Yay, that's right. I wondered why Catherine was asking that, but her next words cleared up the mystery. Then what was even the point of divorcing you and remarrying him? Huh? What do you mean by that? He told me he had more money than you and could give me a more luxurious life, so I married him. I finally understood why Catherine dumped me. She married Wilson for his money. It's not like I was a bad provider. I made sure Catherine never struggled. But I guess when she found out there were better guys than me, she wanted to divorce me. I mean, it's normal for a single older guy to have more money to use. I was supporting Catherine alone, while also paying off our mortgage. Comparing me and Wilson, it's obvious who had more financial freedom. While we were dating and married, I never noticed at all, but maybe Catherine is actually pretty dumb. Then, upon learning that my position and salary were higher, Catherine said something outrageous. Hey, want to get back together? Yay, that's definitely better. Where is this coming from all of a sudden? I mean, it must be tough being single, right? I'll do the housework for you again. Incredibly, Catherine was saying she wanted to reconcile with me. You have Wilson, don't you? Besides, I have no interest in getting back together. Why are you being so cruel? Even though everyone in the supermarket was watching, Catherine started crying right there. From an outsider's perspective, I probably looked like the worst kind of man. This supermarket is close to my house. I didn't want weird rumors spreading in the neighborhood. Anyway, I decided to leave. I put back the basket I had planned to shop with and exited the store. As I was walking briskly home, I felt someone yank me hard from behind. I turned around to see Catherine standing there. Hey, why are you trying to go somewhere? Don't leave me behind. Leave you? You have your own home to go back to, don't you? He never comes home at all. I listened to her story a bit. Apparently Wilson never goes home. That's partly because he has to work overtime, but also because he comes back after drinking alcohol every night. Plus, he always returns after the last train, so taxi fares aren't cheap either. On top of that, his suit smells like women's perfume, and business cards from women have fallen out of his wallet. Well, of course a guy like Wilson who seduces married women would do that much. Usually you would notice, but Catherine was totally clueless. And now she was staring at me with an expression that practically screamed she was the ultimate victim, the tragic heroine. I was happier when I was with you, Mike. I want to go back to those days. There's no going back now. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror lately? Why would you say that? You're awful. Catherine says she wants to return to the past, but does she realize how much she's changed? Maybe Catherine was always a shallow person from the start. Meeting Wilson just brought that to the surface, transforming her into the worst kind of human. As we went back and forth like this, I saw someone approaching Catherine from behind at an incredible speed. "Hey, what are you doing with my wife?" It was Wilson. He forcefully wrenched Catherine's hand off me. "Are you trying to steal Catherine from me? You've got the wrong idea. She's been clinging to me, and I'm sick of it. Now I am leaving." "Wait. Get back together with me." Wilson had a firm grip on Catherine as she tried to shake him off. Sensing my chance, I hurried home. Running into them at the supermarket means they might live nearby. I just moved back here, but I should probably relocate. With that thought, I immediately found a new place and decided to live in a high-class residential area. For a while after that, I had no contact from Catherine, but one day as I was leaving the office, she was waiting to ambush me. "I want to get back together with you, you hear? Get back together. Aren't you married to Wilson? At least, you should get divorced before coming to me with this. How do you expect me to support myself in the meantime?" Apparently, Catherine had no intention of divorcing Wilson until I accepted her back. The reason being that she wouldn't be able to make a living on her own. If that's the case, she should just get a job, but she stubbornly refuses to work. Who would want to be with such a miserable woman? Well, Wilson did marry her, so I guess Wilson and Catherine were definitely two of a kind. There was no point in moving if she knew where I worked. I wasn't planning to change jobs, so I needed to somehow have her give up on getting back together with me. Just then, a woman approached from behind Catherine. "Mike, you done with work?" "Yeah, just finished up." "Who the hell are you? Don't act so familiar with Mike." Catherine bared her hostility towards the woman who suddenly appeared. "Oh come, I'm sorry. Mike, who is this?" "My ex-wife. And this is Sarah, my wife." "What? You're just lying about being married, right?" "Well, strictly speaking, we're not married yet, but I am living with Sarah. Plus, I just proposed to her recently, and we've set a date to make it official, so I think it's fine to call her my wife." "Hey, isn't this a bit too early to tell?" "You shut your mouth. Mike is mine." "Please stop." Catherine was coming across as so ugly. Just talking to her was draining my energy. On top of that, she was talking badly to my precious Sarah. I was reaching my limit. "You're seriously pissing me off. Why should I have to put up with this? What goes around comes around. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself." Leaving her with those words, I took Sarah's hand and started walking. I could hear Catherine screaming behind us, but I made sure not to let any of it reach my ears. After that, I went on the date I had promised Sarah and spent a blissful time with her. Some time later, I heard Wilson and Catherine's relationship deteriorated and they got divorced. Wilson held a grudge against me and tried to harass me, but his actions were illegal, so in the end, he was the one who got punished. At first there was talk of him being demoted, but before I knew it, Wilson stopped coming to the office. He probably couldn't bear being transferred to the boonies and taking a pay cut. As for Catherine, she had nowhere to go, so she moved back in with her parents. But apparently, since she got divorced twice in such a short span, all sorts of rumors are flying around the neighborhood. Catherine's parents told Catherine to just get a job already, so she started working part-time at a nearby convenience store, but she quit right away because she felt out of place. Now she's become a shut-in. Since then, I'm married to Sarah and we're planning our honeymoon. I had poor judgment in my previous marriage and it ended in failure, but I'm sure it'll be fine this time. With that thought, I gently squeezed the hand of Sarah sleeping beside me.